Welcome to the discussion segments of New Dawn this morning. And to kick it off, the nomenclature of Federal Republic of Nigeria is for a certain purpose. And the purpose is the fact that Nigeria is supposed to be a federating nation where every state is supposed to be a subnation, standing on its own and making its own entity. But what do we have now? And that is what we'll be discussing today as we'll be addressing the topic, addressing the components of true federalism for Nigerian states. To discuss that, we have two gentlemen in the house, and one of them, a lecturer, Dr. Lekon Oketokun. He's a lecturer. Welcome to New Dawn this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, guys.
And to talk with us again is a former commissioner for local government and chieftaincy affairs in Ogun State, politician of repute, Chief Jide Ojukwu. Welcome to New Dawn, sir.
How are you today?
Very fine, sir.
Good morning.
All right, and the topic is on your screen right now. I want to talk about true federalism. Is federalism that we are practicing in Nigeria really the way it should be done? How can we make it better? Moses.
Okay, let me start with Dr. Lekon Oketokun. We talk about true federalism, and it appears to be a made in Nigeria fantasy, more of a complete fallacy when I say true federalism, and is either true or false. So, are we practicing federalism in the real sense of it?
Well, thank you very much. Let me start by saying that, as you have rightly alluded, there are no true or false federalism. What we have are variants of what you call federalism. And that happens because no two states are exactly the same. If you look at the history of every nation, no two nations have the same history, have the same culture, and have the same constituent parts. So when you practice federalism, those things have to come to play. And Nigeria's federalism is a derivation, if you like, of our history, our culture, and all those things that have brought us together, especially as it relates to our colonial past and things like that. Now, having said that, when you now talk about federalism in the real sense of it, and the way it is practiced, the first thing to say about that is that when you say you operate a federal system, federalism has a meaning, and it has a description, and you can only begin to see whether federalism is practiced the way it should be practiced or not when you put what obtains on ground with the ideals, with those things that have been described as federalism or federalist states. So when you aggregate that and you see deviations, large deviations from what federalism is supposed to be, then you begin to, that's when people begin to talk about true federalism or false federalism and things like that. But as I've said, there are no true federalism, there are no false federalism. Now, the Nigerian federal system, if you look at the definition of federalism as postulated by some scholars, especially Casey Ware, federalism is an arrangement, it's a political arrangement where there is a constitutional division of powers between a central government and component units. And those component units could be states, could be regions, could be cantons, depending on what a state operates. And that division of power is such that each level of government is independent and coordinate in the areas of jurisdiction. Now, having said that, if you look at the Nigerian Federation, the crux of the matter, really, why people begin to talk about true federalism and things like that, is because people have identified that there is a kind of structural imbalance among the federating, within the tiers of government. And I don't know whether we can go into that now, you want to bet. Let me just broach it. And to say that if you look at the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, there is a clear centralization of power at the center. And that is the crux of the matter, leaving little or very few things for the other federating units and the levels of government, And that is where the problem is. So at every particular point in time, you now see the situation where states or component units that are supposed to be independent in action and coordinate in the areas of jurisdiction, running to the center at every slight opportunity, either for funding, for virtually everything. So that is the preliminary remarks I want to make about that.
All right, I will still, before I come to Chief Ojukwu, I still want you to define something. When you talk about true federalism, the first thing that comes to a typical Nigerian's mind, maybe because of what the politicians have sold to us, is that power should be devolved from the central. Now, is that for the sake of knowledge and education? Is that really true federalism? Because all we talk about this, all we hear is devolution of power, devolution of power. What is how does it relate?
Well, when you talk about federalism, federalism is a political arrangement where power is shared between a central government, as I've said, and component units. Now, when people talk about devolution, devolution is not unconnected with what I said earlier in Nigeria, that the kind of federalism we operate in Nigeria is some have described it as unitary federalism. That is, you have a structure that, for example, in the 1999 Constitution, you have about 68 items exclusively for the federal government alone, whereas you have just 16 items in the concurrent list. And that concurrent list, even the federal government, when you talk about concurrent list, that's areas where the federal government, as well as the states or component units, can legislate on. And if you have 68 exclusively for the federal government, and then 16, and even that 16 is even legislated upon between the two of them. And when there is a clash, you understand me, the federal position prevails according to the 1999 Constitution. So you will discover that when people talk about devolution of powers now, what they are saying is that you have too much powers at the center. And that is not unconnected, as I've said before, with our history. You know that Nigeria has been ruled by military dictatorship for a very long time. We're under military rule. And so when the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, was going to be put in place, it was midwifed by the military. And many of the lofty things that the Constituent Assembly, or the people who framed that Constitution, put into that Constitution were changed by the military at that point in time, because the military felt that they were still going to be in the saddle and they would not be able to contend with the centripetal forces that would be in their way in achieving their goals. Because they are in the saddle and they felt that having tasted power, they discovered that power is sweet. And they wanted to continue. And the only way they could do that was to ensure that whatever came out of the 1999 Constitution will be one that will continue to be in their interest. And so that's why you have the kind of centralization of power, as against what you have in other climes, where although the central government is powerful in any federation, the central government is usually more powerful. But what you have is a situation where there is a moderation to that power. For example, in the United States of America, where we copied our own type of federalism, except for foreign affairs and issues of defense and currency. You understand me? You hardly see the president having the kind of powers that states have their own Supreme Court in the United States of America, for example. And they have their own police. You understand me? And their local governments even have police. You understand me? But in Nigeria, what do we have? Everything is centralized, so much so that those things are exclusively.
Okay, I'd like to take on Chief Jide Ojukwu. You have been in the Ministry of Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs. Now, I would like you to ask, there's this clamor by some people for autonomy of the local government. Now, how does this relate to true federalism? Really, is the local government really autonomous? And indeed, is this part of the true federalism that people are clamoring for?
Yeah, thank you. Like my brother has said, good morning, viewers. We need to go into a little bit of political history of this country before you can be able to come to a definite conclusion. Like you said, we've gone through the military after independence. The military had ruled us for maybe 40 out of the 60 years of independence, and democracy is just so young. A boy of 2021 is still a very young boy or girl. So our democracy is still very young, and we need to take cognizance of that. And because of the fact that when you want to talk of federalism, you are talking of democracy. And they say democracy is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. Yes. And if that is the foundation, we need to talk of certain important ingredients of federalism and governance. You see, we shouldn't forget that we started with the parliamentary system of government. It graduated to presidential that we went to bring from America. And like my brother has said, you see, federalism is about control of affairs by the component bodies of that federal state, whereas the center is purely to make national policies. So if the center has to make national policies and the components are supposed to take care of their own affairs, including their resources, including whatever they have, so it means there's a gap somewhere. So because I've been part of the system, I want to be careful in my choice of words. Whether the local governments are autonomous or not. There was this, what they call it, oath of secrecy and allegiance. I don't want to breach that here. Okay. It's because if I talk too much, you say, Ashebara, you are part of them. So I want to be careful of that. But the essence of the whole thing is that federalism in Nigeria has a lot of problems, has a clear K-leg. And because we have the federal government, the state, the local government, as of today, my own position is that the federalism that we are supposed to practice in Nigeria is not yet in place because of certain factors. These factors are, you and me, we see them on a daily basis. Doctor has said it, concurrent and exclusive list, 68-16. Then, where are we going from there? So, because of the fact that the military had done a lot of things in their favor, we have that situation of imbalance as of today. To me, the federal government or the center need to do a lot for the local governments. That is the kind of approach I want to give it. the local government should be revitalized, because the central government hasn't got the people. State hasn't got the people. The people we are talking about, we are ruling, is at the local government. They are in the wards. So if you really want to manage our resources very well, the way it should be managed, and in a way that is going to touch Nigerians, I think more should be done to the local governments. That is the way I want to put it.
Well, Chief Jide Ojukwu,
Yes.
the early 1960s, I think we had a proper federal system backed by the 1963 Constitution, and that led to, and of course, the regions were strong, but capable enough to challenge the center, and that led to agitation for self-determination. One of such regions, wanted to separate, wanted to secede, and that reportedly claimed lives of over 3 million people. So are we mature for this true federalism, as it were, looking at the fact that regions could challenge the center?
Well, the fact is that when we belong to the same family, and we have these resources that we are supposed to control together. We have resources that are supposed to be shared, you see, and somebody is now sitting down on those resources at my own expense. I have a right to cry out. In any case, to me, in those days when the Western region had cocoa, when the North had the granite pyramid, and the East with palm oil or whatever, I saw them as a better federative units of the country. Look at what Awolowo and his government did with cocoa in the Western region then. Today, up to today, we still have reminiscences of what Awolowo did with that money. And if you go to other parts of the country too, there are signs of those good old days. So it depends on the way you manage me. If you manage me very well, I don't have to succeed. If you manage me very well, I don't have to run away from you. Doctor has said, the 1999 Constitution was substituted over by the military. And they were able to manipulate and put those things that will favor the khaki boys in that Constitution. And if that is the case, that will probably be the source or the cause of that secession you are referring to. Because the essence of the thing is that when you have A, B, C, D that is supposed to be shared among us, and somebody is now sitting down on those A, B, C, D, there will be problems. You see, look at today, for example. The federal government is taking the largest share of our national income. They are giving a certain percentage to the state, the least to the local government. Whereas local government has more issues than the federal government. To me, if we want to talk about housing, talk of primary education, primary health, and other things like that, they're supposed to come to the local government. How can you sit down in Abuja and tell me you want to know how many primary schools I have in my village? For example, what is Superb doing? Superb has nothing to do with the local government and the wards. Agric, the federal government hasn't got land. What is it doing with Agric? Take Agric to the local government. It is the local government that has the land. And that is my problem with this land use decree. It was manipulated, it was brought into the system because some people wanted to take the land of the people at the local level. So these are issues we must consider. Because if you try to push me to the wall, the only thing I can do is to react. So my suggestion or my appeal is that things should be done properly. especially between the center, the state, and the local government.
Okay, now, Dr. Leko Kitoko, then how best can we do the potential call for self-determination if true federalism, comes on board?
Well, I think the call for what did you say?
Self-determination. The fact that some regions would have the resources, will want to challenge the center, somewhat.
Well, when you look at the 1999 Constitution, I think the bone of contention really is that when you look at the 1999 Constitution, and when you talk about fiscal federalism, for example, all the things that will bring money to the component units have been given to the federal government. And that's why you have these calls for self-determination by some people and things like that, so that they can control their own resources. Really, as Chief Ojukwu has rightly alluded, in the 60s, when we had the regions, the western, the eastern, and the northern region, the resources were controlled by the various regions. And that's why those resources could be used to develop those regions. They were only paying royalties to the center at that point in time. We had cocoa in the west, they had the granite pyramids in the north, and then you have palm oil something in the east. And the resources from that was used solely for the development of this. They were only paying royalties. But when the oil boom came and everybody discovered that there was oil and the money coming from oil was massive, we abandoned agriculture. And when the military came, they discovered that the money coming from oil was it was too much to be left to that area where it's been mined, for example. So they centralized everything so that everything about oil and things like that now became an issue. And that's why people have described our federalism now as a feeding bottle federalism, where everybody now, at the end of the month, runs to the center and then wait for that share from the Federal Accounts Allocation Commission. And that is not good for any viable federation. The federating units must have enough resources to be able to take care of that. But when all these resources have been hijacked, and with little or nothing for the federating units, that's why you have clamor for self-determination, resource control, and things like that. And those calls are not calls that should be waved away if we are to move forward. I believe that everything should be done to see how we can begin to think out with the system so that some of those resources, like mines, all those mineral resources, what is the federal government? In fact, apart from oil that the federal government is mining, all those mineral resources are just lying fallow in their respective states. The states are unable to do anything about it because the power to carry out anything on those things resides with the federal government. You have a lot of minerals in Osun State. If Osun State could could have a way of doing something about it without going to beg the federal government to do something, the Osun State will have a lot of money. We have a lot of resources here as well. So when you have situations like that on ground where the major revenue earning capacities of government resides with the federal government, then you cannot but have calls for self-determination and all those kind of agitations that you have going on within the polity, as it were today.
Right, Dr. Kitoko, I'd like to, we've spoken about physical allocation,
yes.
The situation where the federal government gets a larger chunk of the money and leaving the state and local government with very little.
Yeah.
You've spoken about resource control.
Yeah.
Now, how do we now go about getting this done? Because from what you both gentlemen have said, you've spoken about the Constitution do we go review the constitution? Because some people are saying that the constitution is okay, it's only how we implement it. Do we go about that, having to find our way to what we call true federalism?
Well, there is no, when you have a problem and you have identified the problem, we have said that the 1999 Constitution gives too much powers to the federal government. And that is what is causing all these challenges that we have within the Federation. So the best way, or the viable way to go about it, is to tinker with the Constitution, so that more powers will be devolved to the component units. And when that is done, I believe that all these kinds of agitations that people are making here and there, left, right, and center, would go down a bit. For example, you talk about insecurity, for example, and look at what is happening. You have a federal police there that is largely incapable of tackling the myriads of security challenges that we have. And yet, you have some people saying that you don't want to have state police. That the state police will be used to victimize political opponents. For Christ's sake, we are in a democracy. In other climes, once you elect some people to be in the saddle, everything about governance, about that corporate entity resides with them. So to say that they will use it to oppress political opponents, or that they do not have enough resources and things like that, they are just things to deflate the kind of fine arguments, or the robust advantages that can be gained from doing those things. I don't see why states shouldn't have their police to tackle insecurity within their environment. I don't even see why local government should not have their own local police to tackle insecurity within their areas. You understand? In other climes where you have a semblance of security, architecture, security, serenity, as it were, you have all those things there. And these are things that makes federalism work. But when you have a central police that has to take instruction from a central command, so if there is a security challenge in Ogun State, for example, the state governor cannot order, as it were today, the commissioner of police. If the state governor says the police or the police commissioner should go and do this, the police commissioner will still revert to the IG. And the IG might even want to talk to the president, you understand me, before action is taken. These are what are causing challenges within the system. And so the way to go about it, as some people have said, is to find a way to negotiate these things constitutionally. And when this is done, I believe that we'll begin to have, to make headway in some of the challenges that we have.
Okay. Chief Jide Ojoko, are we not inching closer to the true federalism now that some items have been passed from the exclusive list to the concurrent list, power, rail transportation, and a few other items? Is there a semblance to the picture we want to see?
Yeah, let me say that we should not run away from the problem. There's clearly an issue on the table. When you talk of federalism, you are talking about the Constitution, more importantly. Yes. Now, once our Constitution has issues in terms of its contents, we should take the courage of sitting down to look at the document from the beginning to the end. Look at the issue of security, for example. We may not be able to do well until the so-called federalism is extended to our security system. You want to bring an Hausa man to Abeokuta to come and collect intelligence for you, for the police or the army or to use. He doesn't understand the language. So it comes to the area of efficiency. People will be committing crime in his presence. I will not know. They'll be planning crime in his presence. He will not know. Take a Yoruba man to the east, in the core of the real Igbos. And problems, they will be planning a lot of evil things. He will not be able to collect the right intelligence for his people to use to cover these crimes. So what I'm saying in effect is that we should not transferring few percentage or few items from the concurrent to the exclusive or vice versa will still not solve our problems. What we need is a holistic approach, a whole review of the contents of our constitution. It doesn't take us any time. It doesn't take anything away from us. If you want to really build Nigeria the kind of presidential system you want to be using, our constitution should be taken care of. Otherwise, we just be dancing around the same issue on a daily basis. And before you know it, things will be going from bad to worse. So my position is that let us pick our constitution, sit down, look at it, and ensure that it comes to the kind of reality with the kind of operations we have in America, where we imported our presidential system. It's very important. So I think we still need to do more in terms of that book called Constitution.
All right, Dr. Ketokun, now that we have not yet reviewed the Constitution, and state governments and local governments are crying of economic challenge, not being able to meet their needs and paying salaries and all. What should be done now for those governments, subnational governments, to make things better for themselves and maybe make life better for their people, since the Constitution has obviously not been reviewed to tend towards true federalism?
Well, thank you very much. I think states and local governments will have to be more innovative in terms of revenue generation and revenue management. They should begin to look at areas of waste and curbing those areas. And then, if possible, operate lean government, for example. But by and large, what you talk about can only be done effectively when we tinker with the Constitution, as we have rightly said. There is little the states and local governments can do to widen the base of their IGR in the real sense of the word, to take care of the many challenges that they confront on a daily basis. When you put all the resources that could generate income for the state and local government, and you pack them to the federal, to the center, you are creating a problem. And that's why many of these states are insolvent. That's why they are having challenges. The only way, one of the pragmatic ways of overcoming that is to ensure that that constitution that we talk about, especially as it relates to fiscal federalism, is tinkered with. So much so that some of those resources that bring money could come to the states and the local government. And then again, when that is done, a lot of states who have those resources, those mineral resources, can then exploit it to their advantage. They may not have the resources to exploit, but they will go into partnership with foreign investment, and those resources will be exploited to the advantage of the state. But the way things are now, states will continue to cry, because every day they are being muzzled, in quotes, when it comes to their revenue base. And let me also say this. The same thing that the federal is doing to the other component, the state is also doing to the local government. Before, there are some things that are reserved for local governments. Now, if you go to many states now, you discover that those things have been taken over by the state governments. And I don't know why. So much so that local governments now cannot do even trunk C roads. Even to grade some of these roads is a big challenge to some of these local governments. To build classrooms for primary school is a big challenge. You understand me? What you have now is a situation where everybody relies on UBEC to come and build primary schools in some of the states. You understand me? For example, there is no, when it comes to primary school and things like that, I don't think the federal government should have anything to do with that. But you discover that the Universal Basic Education, Commission, is the one in charge of building primary schools now. Because they have the resources that should have come to the local governments to do that, have been given to UBEC because of the kind of resources at the center. So these are some of the challenges that the state face. In the First Republic, when we had the Awolowos, the Azikiwes, and all those things are done by the local government, by the various regions. And what they had then were very vibrant things. So up to today, the products of those systems are still, it can still pride themselves as having gotten the best of everything. You understand me? But what do we have today? In spite of more resources that we have now, when you look at the resources from oil and other things, VAT and things like that, you discover that we are still unable to do as much as they did in those days when those resources were controlled by the various regions. So these are some of the challenges, and I believe that unless and until such a time that those things that bring money to governments are devolved to the local and state governments, the state government will continue to have those challenges. But much more importantly, the little money at the disposal of the states and local government should also be spent judiciously. They should eliminate all manner of waste and see to it that corruption and its various manifestations are reduced to the barest minimum. When this is done, they will be able to efficiently allocate those resources and then bring out something from the scenario that is not desirable, at least for now.
All right, then, Chikiti Rujuko, it seems to me that the political class are the reason why we still don't have true federalism. Case in study is the fact that National Assembly passed local government autonomy, for example, and they needed some number of House of Assembly to sign for it to be effective. But up till now, the number of state assemblies that should sign have not really done that. Now, we have several times where we had national conferences, especially during the era of Goodluck Jonathan, and the issue of constitutional review through federalism was spoken about, and there was a communique, and nothing is being done. Why do you think the political class still don't want this true federalism to come to place?
Well, let me, before I go into that, I want to say that when the head is bad, the entire body will surely have a problem. To me, one of the easiest way of solving our problem or of ensuring real fiscal federalism and eliminate some of these problems, especially at the state level. In fact, I want to tell you, day in, day out, states governments are being made unpopular because of this problem inherited from the center. I've been part of it, and I can say a little bit about it. A lot of money. Federal government sits down on a lot of money that they are not supposed to sit down on. A lot of waste at the center. Too much money at the center. And this money is supposed to be passed on to the state. And I'm sure if the money is passed to the state will equally pass to the local government. If I'm asked to suggest, look at the number of members you have at the National Assembly. Look at their salary. Look at their take-home pay. For what? To me, I don't want to go too far on that, but the best bet is to turn our National Assembly into a part-time situation. The lot of money that is being sunk into the National Assembly is one of the major problems you have in this country. What are they doing there? Some of them for 8 years will not even utter a word. And they are going home with about 30 million, 20 million per month. I think more money should be given to the states. Because if you don't give them money, they will look for all other means of getting money. And that's why people are crying at the state level. State excess of taxes, excess of this, excess of that. The same thing goes to the local government because they just want to exist. So my advice is for the federal government to shed load. Shed load in terms of finances. And that is a major constitutional issue that should be taken up. Look at the array of personnel that are in the National Assembly, that are in the executive of the federal government. When a minister is going now, you see them going with about 10 vehicles, policemen, SSS, personal aids, and so on and so forth. All these are eating into the resources of the country. So my own summary is that there's too much money at the center. And such money should be passed down to the state. And when it gets to the state, it should be passed down to the local government. That is number one. Number two, as for the bill you are talking about, that is the
local government autonomy.
The local government autonomy. We also have the same thing with the judiciary, the same thing with other arms of government. I think it's all about political will. It's all about political will. It depends on the way you look at it. I don't think any state will deliberately sit down on a policy that will improve its welfare. You see, perhaps the way Boeing sees this bill is different from the way Ogun sees it. Don't forget, they will sit down, discuss the outcome of such bill. What are the benefits? If they are passed by me in my House of Assembly, what are the benefits? And even if you pass, are they going to be implemented? That is the issue. So everybody is being cautious about passing bills that do not see the light of the day. So if there's assurance that once these bills are passed, or the concurrence from the State House of Assembly, then things will improve. But they are being careful. But I think what we can do first, I still repeat, pick our constitution, or have a general review. If, for example, the constitution is reviewed, there will be a time limit with which the Houses of Assembly must pass these bills. But it's an open bill, it's an open something now. You can, if you pass it into the State Assembly, you can take 10 years before we pass. No sanction, nothing. But with the review of the Constitution, everybody knows the bounds. I'm supposed to do this between 1 and 2 days, between 2 days and 1 week. It's a situation of perhaps where the control, the rules are not there. Everything boils down on our constitutional provisions. So my advice for the government, or any government or any administration, is to take that courage. It's a matter of courage, and allow the Constitution to be looked into. And once the Constitution is looked into, all these things will be clearly stated. And the state, the federal, the local government, you know their areas of operations.
Well, Chief Ojukwu, well, it remains to be seen when the Constitution be properly looked into, but there are talks of reforms. For example, the Orosai reports seems to be addressing cutting cost of governance, merging similar ministries, departments, and agencies. And don't you think this also will go a long way?
That is just a tip on the iceberg. The civil service is just a part of the system. If you want to go with Orosai report, go set up a committee to look into the situation in the other arms of government. Look at the executive of the federal government. Because the essence of the Orosai report is to cut down cost. Then, if you want to tell me I'm not good, take care of your house first. The components, the expenditure of the federal government in terms of personnel, political personnel I mean, should also be looked into. The components, the political expenditure of the National Assembly should also be looked into. Do we need a large size of assembly like that, for example? If we need them, do we have to pay them as much? That's what they call constituency allowance. Where does the money go? I'm sorry, I don't want to talk too much, but see, there are issues we have to look at before we come back to reality of federalism. You see, Yorubas will say, "Dear lowo oko, dear lowo ale." Unless all of us sit down together and realize the fact that we need to do things right, then we are still not getting to anywhere.
Well, Dr. Okitoko, states have made efforts. There have been calls for restructuring, particularly in the southern parts of Nigeria. You will recall the VAT collection in Brooklyn of last year. We don't know what's happening to that, if states would be given the authority to collect VAT within their domain. So, I mean, what else do you think states could do to enforce this true federalism that we're talking about? Because it seems federal government is not just looking towards this direction, and it's unclear the reason why federal government seems to be full dragging.
Well, the federal government is full dragging because if you're a beneficiary of a system, you don't want that system to change. It's like putting a knife to your own neck and slashing it. So it is not the federal government that should be in the vanguard of effecting the change as is being done through the National Assembly, for example. Chief Ojukwu has said a lot. There is a lack of political will on the part of the various stakeholders to ensure that these changes are brought to bear. Even the National Assembly that is saddled with the responsibility of amending the Constitution in conjunction with the states, they also do not have the political will because you see them doing it in a haphazard manner, not in the manner that will get the desired result. Now, having said that, the issue of VAT is still in court, is before the courts, and so there's nothing anybody can do about that for now until the court determines. But it is good that such issues are being brought to the front burner before, such issues as collection of VAT has always been swept under the carpet. But with the courage of the Lagos State government and the Rivers State government in bringing such issues to the front burner, I think we are moving somewhere. The idea of a state having having the preponderance of people who pay for VAT, and then when it comes to sharing, those states who are even averse to some of the things that for whom those VAT are collected gets even more than the states where those things are derived from, leaves much to be desired. But generally speaking, as we have rightly said, if we want to get the kind of federalism that operates in other climes, I think a lot needs to be done about the 1999 Constitution, especially as it relates to fiscal federalism, because the whole essence of the agitation boils down to fiscal federalism. States and the component units not having the benefit of the resources at their domain. And when you talk about stability and the development of the component, which is equally important when you have a federation, because the component unit must develop in the same manner as you have the central government. And then they need the resources to also be able to achieve whatever it is they want to do. And so that's it.
All right, thank you so much for the discussion. Chief Ojukwu, thank you so much for coming. And Dr. Okitoku, you've done so well to the topic. Our viewers, we have to draw the curtain on this segment of the discussion segment, and we've been talking for some few minutes about components of true federalism in Nigeria and how we can achieve a country that true federalism really exists. We'll take this break. Don't go anywhere. Our another guest is coming here. We'll be discussing something very germane and very interesting.